So I have about 115 hours between both of these bikes. This bike over here has 85 hours and this one here has 30 on it. I'm going to be switching brands in a couple weeks, so thought I'd do a video breaking down all the the problems I've had, the positives on the bike, the negatives, and then just some of the stuff I'm kind of neutral about. First off, I'm going to get to the point here. Positive number one, this bike is super fast. I had a 24 KTM, I had a 22 Cowie, I had a 22 Honda CRF 450. This Yamaha bike, even though on the horsepower, the dyno, it doesn't say it's the fastest, it feels like it's the fastest bike I've ridden in the last 5 to 6 years. That's also a negative too. For a national caliber rider, a really fast local pro that is in shape, I think this bike is really good. If you are a vet guy, what I found is it's kind of a handful. It's hard to hold on to. It's so fast, and you can kind of detune it with the Power Tuner app. But yeah, the bike is super fast. So if you're a vet guy, don't always be looking for horsepower. We all want a 450. My bike's got 60 something horsepower. The average human cannot control the 450s. Sometimes the slower bikes are better. I was pretty fast on my KX450, probably about the same speed I was on this, and that bike had 4 less horsepower, a little more manageable in corners, and I wasn't flying off of the back of it all the time. So when you're going out to get a bike, just because it doesn't have the most horsepower, if you're riding the over the hill gang, or you're a vet guy, just because the bike is super fast doesn't necessarily mean that you need it. Positive number two, the bike is very reliable. I never lost a single bolt off the bike. The spokes, once they're tight on these wheels, they stay tight. So you don't even really have a need to get other wheels because the stock ones are so good. It's hard to compare to these stock wheels and how good they are. The negative as far as reliability goes is the clutch. When I bought this bike, I came off KTM. I had a KTM and I put like 100 hours on the clutch. Most bulletproof clutch that I had ever ridden on up to that point. Yamaha copied KTM's clutch, but they missed the mark on the 23 and 24 models. They didn't drill enough holes in the inner hub. And so what happens is the clutch plates, you get one moto in the mud, one hard day of riding where you're just a little clutch happy, which I can tend to be sometimes, you will cook the dampers inside of the inner hub. The inner hub doesn't need to be replaced because it notches. I know a couple other people have said that it may notch. The inner hub doesn't notch. The outer hub doesn't notch. None of that wears out. It's all steel. I'm not sure what the inner hub is made of. The outer hub's steel, but mine had 80 something hours on it, was not notched. I went through a ton of clutches, spent a bunch of money on clutches, could not figure out what it was. I did another video on the dampers, kind of break it down, show what happens and show what goes on with those dampers. But if you have a Yamaha and you're like, this bike does not feel like it did when it was brand new. When I got this bike brand new, it was wheeling out of my hands. After a while, it felt slower than my 22 KX450. It only took me about 70 hours to figure out that the dampers were the problem. Once I replaced the dampers, bike felt like a brand new bike again. But don't just, on a 23 and 24, don't just replace the dampers and not replace your inner hub. You're going to just, every 10 hours, you will be going through clutch dampers, the little rubber things inside of the inner hub. Get either a Recluse system or a Hinson. I prefer the Recluse system just because I'll talk about the Belleville spring too. There's an issue with that. But either one, you just need something that circulates more oil. We'll go onto the Belleville washer. The Belleville washer, which is your clutch pressure spring, is way too soft in this bike. Hinson makes a stiffer Belleville washer, or you can go with the whole Recluse system where they give you their own springs and they can give you actual stiffer springs. You'll fry clutches because of that. And it's kind of funny to me that Yamaha they copied KTM's design, but they just missed a few marks on it, and it actually wears out quicker or just as quick as my Yamaha did. Or not my Yamaha, my KX450 did. But definitely not the life of a KTM clutch. But like I said, this bike is super reliable. That is the only problem that I had, like motor-wise, is the clutch. 65 hours on the top end. So my buddy from Barron Suspension, he does motors as well, works on them. He pulled it apart, had 65 hours. The bike looked brand new. I was super paranoid with the air filter system because when you change it, it's super easy to drop dirt in there. I did my best not to drop dirt in the air filter system. But But yeah, he said the top end, the crank, everything was tight, looked brand new at 65 hours. This one's at 85. This one's at 30. They still run identical. Neither of them feel really tired, other than that clutch thing that I talked about, which took me quite a while to figure out. Great suspension stock. Stock suspension is very, very good. You could go out and I think you could qualify for a national on stock suspension. Some guys have done it. The stuff's good. It's good for anybody. It's good for a vet novice. It's good for a local novice, and it's good for a pro. The KYB stuff is really, really hard to beat. The front, okay, so this is one of the negatives. I have never been a super picky tire guy. You know, the Cowie, I could care less what was on the Cowie 450 with tires. I would just run whatever I had, or, you know, Dunlops, Pirellis, whatever. Just put it on and run them. This bike, I know they say it's twitchy, and there's a few reasons why it's twitchy. One of the things that helped me was the front tire. I went to a Pirelli MX32, rode it for a while. At first, I kind of thought it was placebo effect. I was, you know, man, this tire is so great, it's so good. Took my lap times. I'm like, okay. One of the bikes, I forgot that I had Dunlops on it. I went and rode at a local track, Club Moto, and I was riding horrible. What it turns out, I was messing with my suspension, checking sag, and then I looked down at the front tire, and I had the MX33 on the front. Boiled it down to that. I put the Pirelli back on, the MX32, the standard front tire, run about 14 pounds in it, and it took away that vague front end feeling and part of the twitchiness. So let's go back to the twitchy part of it. So what a lot of people are doing with the suspension and the twitchiness is they are running a lot of sag in the back, and they're running the forks, you know, up in the tubes. I did that for a while. I rode at Oatfield, which is a local track that gets pretty rough and ruddy, and my bike was handling horrible. It had been handling good up into that point until I rode a rough track. And I know David Pingree says the same thing. This bike is super finicky on sag. What I found is to run about 98 to 100 millimeters and don't let it go past 102. It might feel okay, but what happens is this bike actually sits really low in the back, and I don't know if it's because of the design or the linkage, but you end up riding off of the shock bumper. So it's very similar to when you ride with forks that are too soft in the front end and it starts to feel really harsh. If you run a lot of sag in the back, you are going to be running halfway down the stroke and bouncing off of your shock bumper, and the bike is going to be all over the place. So what I found the best setup for this bike is to run the forks almost flush with the upper triple clamp and run 98 to 100 millimeters of sag. And it's kind of tricky. I'm 210 pounds. I run a 6'4" in the back, and I run 5'3" in the front, which is quite a bit softer than what Race Tech recommends. And when I set my sag at 98 to 100, I'm getting like crazy 20 millimeters of static sag. But the bike works fine. I've had other bikes where my static sag was off and the bike felt horrible, but it's just the way that this bike works. You run it, you set your sag, try to be within the ballpark range on your rear spring, and it works fine. So to get rid of that twitchiness, few things. Front tire, I personally do not care for the MX33 or the MX34. I ran the MX32, and the MX32 Pirelli gives me the best grip. Hoosier's pretty good too. You can run a Hoosier on the front. I haven't tried a Maxxis. So then one of the other negatives too is the seat gets hammered fast. I have never hammered a seat like I have this. I'm on like my 5th or 6th seat, stock seat. Hammered that real quick. I've put a couple gut seats on, but I rip the gut seats. I don't rip through as quick, but I tear holes in the side of my seat and I blow the foam out. And it's really weird. On the side, each side of my seat, it looks like a mouse got to my seat, and I think that's just from me trying to hold on with my legs when I ride this bike because it's so powerful. So on to the legs part of it. Being this bike was so powerful, I tried a lot of things to keep me forward because it would just wheelie and take off and get out of my arms sometimes. I did mess with the power tuner, but I'll get back to that. What I did was I ran stake pegs for a while. Stake pegs were a huge, huge help. After a while though, and I really like the stake pegs. I was pretty stoked on that. I might do a little review on the stake pegs. I haven't been running them because I have a really bad right knee. I've done 3 ACLs on it, and it's just super weak. I can't run anymore. And the stake pegs were actually hurting my knee, and I had to end up getting knee braces again. I wasn't riding with knee braces, and I'm wearing knee braces because I think just that little puck pushing against the joint in my knee, it was pushing my, you know, my tibia forward, and my femur was going, they were going two different ways, and it kind of wore on my knee. So I took the stake pegs off, and to try to get that control on the rear of the bike that I wanted, what I did was I plastered grip tape everywhere. Grip tape on the frame, grip tape on the number plates. It wasn't as good as the stake pegs, but the grip tape helped keep me in place, and I can manage the bike a lot better with some grip tape on the bike. And everybody's seen like Hunter Lawrence and Jet Lawrence's bike. They have grip tape all over that thing. Gearing. I wouldn't say this is a positive, negative. This is more of just a neutral thing. I played around with gearing. I went to a 48 tooth to try to run second more through corners. It did work, but then I found that I was kind of bogging and hammering the clutch, and I was actually going through clutches a little quicker. Went to a 50 tooth to try to pull third everywhere. Kind of the same thing, and then some corners I would shift down, and then I had to shift too quick, and I was in between on jumps, so I actually just kept it with a 49 tooth, which is really rare for me. Usually I am messing with gearing all the time. I found that the 49 tooth was the best one. Also, with the power on this bike, you want stability, so run that wheel as far back as you can. One time I cut a chain a little too short, and it was up front, and this bike was a nightmare to control. With the wheel back, you can control the bike. It's a lot more manageable when you run the wheel back, and I know a lot of other guys have talked about that lately, running the wheel back. You look at a lot of the guys in the pro class, they run their wheels pretty far back, and that's just a stability thing. You know, I went over the SAG power tuner. I kind of got lost in the weeds. The whole power tuner app is a cool thing, and I like the fact that you can adjust your bike and mess with it and kind of set it to where you want it. I had traction control off, traction control on. The traction control will make you feel like your clutch is slipping. It'll spin. So I ran it for a few weeks, didn't like it, took it off. Tried a few different maps, tried a map, hard-hitting map. I tried a mellow map. I tried one of the ones from Kiefer, and then I got another one. I went all over the place with maps. What I finally settled on was I went back to what they call I guess the Chiz map. All zeros. It's the stock map. I think this bike runs best in the stock map. When you first get it, it might kind of wheelie out of your hands a little bit, so you might want to tone it down a little bit. But once you get used to this bike and you figure out how to grip it with your legs and hold on to it, I think the stock map's the best personally. I've been running, just put it all back to all zeros. I set 1 and 2 at all zeros because sometimes with this switch, I do bump it with my chest or my leg, and I'll switch maps. So I just keep them both set at the stock map, and I don't like having the on the fly. And that way, if I do hit it on accident or my son comes and presses the button, I'm just on the stock map. Nothing to worry about. All right, so let's go on the clutch. I have cable clutch on both bikes. For a while, I did have the GYTR on here. It's a pain in the butt to put on. It takes forever to bleed. I like the feel of it. Now, this is a positive and a negative. I like the cable clutch. I like the feel. I like the modulation you get through corners. You do go through clutches faster because you will get wear, and then you're flipping this thing and you're hammering it, and sometimes you don't run enough play in the middle of the moto. You might not have enough play as to where the hydraulic will adjust itself while you're riding it. But I don't like the pop of the hydraulic clutch. Yes, it's a Brembo. It does not feel like a KTM clutch. I don't know why. It never felt like a KTM clutch to me. I went back to the stock perch. That one's got the stock perch. This one has the Works Connection. I do like the Works Connection one a little better. This is the Honda Works Connection perch. And going back to things, I keep most of my bikes stock. I don't really put any crazy hop-ups. This bike right here, all stock, except for the suspension's done by my buddy Baron, and that's it. Radiator braces. I got the suspension done, radiator braces, whole shot device. Everything else is stock. This bike here, I have a perch. I have a Yoshimura pipe that I got on MX Locker for 300 bucks, and I said, why not try out a pipe? But honestly, not that big of a difference. Stock pipe's great. I think these bikes, 95% of the time, you can ride with stock stuff unless something's off. It's ride at stock, find those things that are off. You know, you can get just totally spend a ton of money on these things. These bikes are they're R&D'd so much that they are so good stock. I leave my bikes mostly stock, and I ride Vet Pro, local pro, you know, not national, or I used to do a lot of arena cross, but not anymore. Just Vet Pro, local pro. These bikes blown stock, they're competitive. Don't need to hop them up all crazy. Radiator braces. The radiators are weak. You fall over, you bend these things. Both these bikes, I fell once, I bent one radiator. After that, I just got radiator braces, no problems at all. Had a few good spills on them. They have not bent. So the radiator braces, super important. I drilled a hole in the airbox. I drilled some holes in this one's airbox. I didn't really notice anything except for more noise. So, I mean, to kind of protect your engine, just I wouldn't waste time with drilling holes in the airbox. And then the last thing here is the front brake. So I messed around a lot with the front brake. The Yamaha's front brake kind of sucks. I did not replace the line. Some people say put a steel braided line and then the Brembo setup on it. What I did was I went to a 280 Galfer on one of the bikes. It worked good. It worked really good, but it was so on off when I hit it that I couldn't ride my front brake through ruts, that I was jerking and like falling forward on the bike with the jerkiness of it. I like a touchy brake when I ride a tight track that's real jumpy. I don't like a touchy brake on outdoors. I like to just keep my wheels rolling. So mushier brakes, but like last weekend I raced at Paris, and two of the guys I was racing with, there was this big tabletop thing against the wall. They could jump it, land it. They were both on Austrian bikes. They could make the inside rut. I tried it 4 times. I never made the inside rut. I blew past it every time. I just could not stop. So what I would do, I don't really think that the oversized rotor is a good setup. I would probably try to go to mess with the line and do a better master cylinder caliper setup. The stock one, it's kind of mushy. It's not the best. Brakes are so-so. But yeah, 100 and something hours. These bikes, no major problems, no cranks, no pistons. Knock on wood somewhere. But yeah, and I mean, I'm 210 pounds. I still ride, local pro, vet pro. I'm always the biggest guy out there. So being being bigger, I have to hammer on these things with the throttle and the clutch a little bit harder. But they've been great. They've been good bikes. Yeah, that's it. And I thought I'd just throw that out there. Just kind of, these are my take on everything and what I did. The clutch is a big thing, so get that fixed. Otherwise, you're just going to be losing your mind trying to figure that out. The brake, the grip tape. The grip tape was huge. Stake pigs were good. I just can't ride with them because it feels like I'm going to blow my knee out. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope this helps any Yamaha owners or anybody going to Yamaha. So, but yeah, on to a new brand in a couple weeks, and that's what's up.